let's get into this. So, like I said, there is a lot to get through. And the reason why I thought it was really important to look at your mindset directly after the Great Goals Masterclass is that you can be really, really good at setting goals and writing them down and this, that, and the other. But if your mindset isn't there, then you're just not going to get anything done, really. Like you will find reasons not to do things. You will procrastinate. You will let things go. And they really do go hand in hand. Like, you need to know the practicalities of how to set a good goal, but you also need to work through any of those blocks that will be holding you back. And trust me, like it doesn't mean that once you achieve one goal and you clear a lot of different mindset stuff that you're never going to have anything again. I mean, stuff comes up constantly when we do things, especially if we're challenging ourselves and we're pushing ourselves in a new direction. It's really, really good to have these things in your toolkit, so when you do come up against them in the future, you know how to deal with it. You can just get to the point where you're like, this is just my mind, I'm going to work through it and deal with it. I know what this is all about and I'm not going to let it stop me. I'm just going to work with it. So with that in mind, the things that we're going to look at tonight, we're going to start with your mind. So why it can be your best friend and your biggest enemy, and why we want it to be more of a friend. We're going to go through how to work with different mindset nasties that might come up. Some three very, very common ones that I find that come up again and again, just in day-to-day life. Even it might not necessarily be as you're working towards a goal, but it can be just in your interactions with people. Aligning to your goals, why that's important. We're going to do something called reduce the excuse. I've got some time management tips for you as well towards the end there, just to give you some idea on how to structure your day if that's something that you're struggling with, because often when we feel organized or we know how to approach a task, then that really, really helps. And then we'll wrap it up with just some tips of, when you know all of this, sometimes you get to the point where it all just feels too hard, and just some little self-care tips for that. So let's get into it. So to start with, you've got your mind being your best friend and your biggest enemy. So your mind is really powerful. If you think about everything that it does, talking about the brain and how it works in your body. I mean, it's just sending these little signals across my body right now saying, move your hands, without me even thinking about moving my hands. It physically digests your food, it helps you breathe, like all these things that your body and your mind do without you realizing it. And then at the same time, there's a lot of things that your mind will do without you realizing it. And a lot of that is, it can be a lot of negative self-talk. And, your brain isn't trying to be a bitch. The sooner that you realize that your mind is just trying to keep you safe, the easier it can be to work through a lot of blocks that you might have. So if you think about back in caveman times, we had all these big fight or flight responses to things, especially if there was a saber-toothed tiger coming towards us, and our mind would just tell us, we got to run, we got to get out of here. And at the same time, in this modern life, we have a lot of different things that feel like that saber-toothed tiger. So it could be the idea of you wanting a new job, but the idea of putting yourself out there and applying for things and going for interviews and starting a new workplace just feels so scary to you, because it's safe in your current job. Even if you don't like it, it's still really safe. And so your mind is trying to do this thing where it's keeping you safe. in that old job, even though it might not be quite serving you at this moment anymore. And so you have that same type of response that we would have had back in caveman times when you saw the saber-toothed tiger. And so your mind is just telling you to run from this new job. It can also, things like that can happen in your relationship. Suddenly you get scared and you want to leave, or I don't know, like even in a good way, actually, like your brain can be telling you not to walk down a dark path. So that's a good way that your brain is keeping you safe. But when it comes out in these different ways where it's stopping you from having a fulfilling relationship or stopping you from having an amazing job, that's when we need to work on it a little bit more. So in those instances, you might feel like your brain is starting to say a lot of these things like, you aren't good enough and you'll never make it. And who do you think you are? And this inner critic is gnawing away at you. And, it can become really debilitating when you let your inner critic take over. And so all it really wants you to do is to just give it a response. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But it is this thing of learning to work with these voices so that you do turn it into an inner cheerleader. And I found this picture. It's like, I never thought I was a bully until I heard how I speak to myself. And I think I owe myself an apology. And this is definitely true for a lot of ways, because there is the saying of, you might, speak to yourself the way you would speak to a best friend, because a lot of the time we do have all these really, really negative thoughts in our brain, and saying all these things like you were stupid, you were dumb, you did that all wrong. Whereas if a friend was telling you that story, you would be really supportive. So the idea is to start to bring some positive thoughts into your life and your mind. And as we go through this tonight, I will talk a little bit more about focusing more on positives and how you can debunk some of these ideas and excuses. So you can start to have this dialogue with your inner critic and start to turn down the dial on it. So I can't guarantee that you'll ever stop this inner critic, because it still comes up for me personally in things, but I've learned how to turn down the dial so it's not as loud, and that I can shut it up a lot easier than I used to. So let's go through, and I'd love it if you could, after a few months of using these techniques, if you could get in touch with me and tell me how you're going and whether you feel like you're getting the same result from it that I have. So what I would like to do with you tonight is to take you from the first panel over here, where you've got the reflection in the mirror saying you're weird, you're ugly, you're not good enough, smashing it out, and then being able to walk away and say, I'm fabulous. Clearly she can't see that. So this is what we're doing. We're smashing our inner critic, and we're just bringing out the inner cheerleader who just feels like you're fabulous and that you can do anything.